Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, Homoeopathic Super Session by Dr. Jagos. Today we'll be doing the second part of the chronic miasms, Psora and pseudo-Psora. Now, Hahnemann traces the history of the miasm, Psora, to the Greek word, which means to itch. So, Dr. Hahnemann says that the Psoric miasm, or the word Psora, has been obtained from the Greek word which means to itch. In older edition of the footnote to the chronic disease, volume 1, page 25, he refers us to the third book of Moses, the Leviticus. So if you see, Moses has written totally 5 books, out of which the third book is the Leviticus. Here the priest differentiates the eruptions in its early stage from the plague of leprosy. So out here the priest, if you read the book of the Leviticus, it says that the priest out here, he differentiates the eruptions in its early stage from the plague of leprosy. The Psora covers up a multitude of functional and pathological changes that take place in the human body. So Psora covers up a great multitude of diseases which could be both functional and pathological. The Psora has pathognomic symptoms of pruritus. So the disease pathognomic means the disease producing symptom. So the disease producing symptom is of pruritus or itching, as the name, as a Greek word suggests, the itch. In syphilis and psychosis, it is absent. So in syphilis and psychosis, you do not get pruritus. It is only seen in the Psora. Historically, the pure life of the Israelites up to the time of Christ kept them comparatively free from the internal inroads of the Psoric miasm. So historically, if you see that the life was very pure when the Israelites were there, right till the time of Christ. And as a result of which, the people out there, they had a simple life, they had good habits, and this was responsible for the less disease to be prevalent during that time. But when man migrated to urban areas, the habits began to corrupt, and we see the breaking forth of the disease. So when the man migrated from the village to the urban areas, then the habits started becoming corrupt, as a result of which the disease started breaking forth. So thus, disease became more and more numerous and more complex. So greater number of diseases evolved, and not only that, but it became also very complex. To combat this, chemical therapeutic preparations and minerals came to its use. So to combat the different diseases or the outbreak of the different diseases which were complex in nature, they had their own therapeutic preparation in the form of chemical drugs. Now, which chemicals were used? Mainly arsenic, mercury, and quinine were used. Complex medicines were used in combinations in addition to the local medicament. So the medicines were given not only in a single dose, or rather in a pure simple form, but it was given in a complex form. Complex form meaning what? In a mixture. So many medicines were mixed together and they were given in addition to whatever local application was given. So what happened? Suppression became a more frequent occurrence. So the disease used to get suppressed. Why? Because number one, you're applying a local ointment to the disease part, as well you're giving an internal medicine which is of complex nature. Therefore, suppression became more frequent. More and more malignant manifestations presented themselves in the form of severe epidemics that broke out during and before Hahnemann's time. So this can be seen because many epidemics, they broke out before and during Hahnemann's time. Even today, these suppressive measures still flourish. So even in today's world, the suppressive measures are still flourishing. Some of them are still in vogue, and new ones are added, such as extensive use of electricity and X-ray. So they say these suppressive measures, they are quite famous, or they are quite popular or in vogue, what we say. And to add to the list, we can also add electricity and X-ray. It suppresses the deeper and more profound pathological expressions of this chronic miasm. So the use of electricity and X-ray, it will suppress the more deeper pathological expressions of the chronic miasms. So many diseases like cancer, lupus, tumors, psoriasis are being suppressed by use of powerful drugs. So all these diseases which are mentioned here, they are suppressed by the use of these powerful drugs. Other forms of suppression are the use of mineral baths of all kinds, medicated douches, actual cautery, surgical operation, especially the removal of organs, etc. So all these also will form a form of suppression, like the mineral baths of sulfur, which were used for the skin diseases, especially for scabies. So cautery. So cautery in during Hahnemann's time, silver nitrate and copper sulfate was used for cauterizing the fig warts or the warts or any other excrescences on the skin. Or surgical operations were done. If the tonsil was enlarged, remove the tonsil. If the pus was in the kidney, they remove the kidney. So therefore, even removal of an organ is a form of an suppression. The latent miasms become active and aroused into activity. So what happens when such type of treatment is given? The latent miasms become active. So the miasms which were in the inactive form or they were lying in the quiescent phase, they become active. They become roused into activity, and the actions become more complex and difficult to cure. And naturally, the action of these miasms will get activated, and they become more complex. As a result of its complexity, it becomes more difficult to cure. Hahnemann mentioned the excessive use of indulgence of tea, coffee, also the use of tobacco, which is drugged with arsenic, strychnine, opium, and tonka beans. So tonka beans is a sort of an intoxication or a drug which is used to get a feeling of wellness within the body. Not to forget to mention the general use of spiritual liquors and highly seasoned food. So all these also are the other methods of which suppression can take place by the use of excessive tea, coffee, and tobacco, or even use of arsenic, strychnine, or tonka beans, and spirituous liquors, and even highly seasoned food. As already mentioned, Psora came as a form of an itch, which was contagious in nature. So a handshake or even a touch of the garments of the affected persons would transmit the disease to another. So as you can know that Psora, it came as an itch, and it was very, very contagious. Just by a handshake, or even if a person was suffering from the psoric manifestations, and if his garment touches the other person, then also the disease would be transmitted. So as you could see, during that time, during Hahnemann's time, there was overcrowding. They used to live in the basement or in the cellars without proper ventilation, or there was poor ventilation, as a result of which the psoric miasm became rampant, and it spread quickly from one person to the other. This is not true for syphilis and psychosis. The Psora would first make its appearance as a pruritus in some form, followed by a fine vesicular eruption. So the first symptom of Psora would be what? An itch. And after that itch, there would be a fine vesicular eruption. Psora could not appear primarily in any form, as suppression would take place. So basically, Psora could not be seen as a primary symptom because suppression would take place. The secondary process would become evident in the form of disease such as eczema and psoriasis. So when the suppression used to take place, the secondary process was seen in the form of a mixed miasm such as eczema and psoriasis. So you couldn't see basically only a true Psora which was in the primary form because of the suppression. It was only through the unscientific and suppressive modes of treatment that Psora has assumed such a character until structural changes took place in the organism. So because of the unscientific methods which were used, or the methods which had no rationale which was used, it causes the suppressive method of treatment. Therefore, Psora also went on to the structural changes. That means what? The miasm change from the Psora to the psychosis to the syphilis to the tubercle. These outward expressions of the latent power of Psora to the therapist was a local expression. So just to a doctor, the outward expression of the latent power of Psora was a local expression. They failed to realize it was due to some deep-seated internal disorder. So the orthodox school of medicine, they failed to realize that this outward expression or the local expression was due to some deep-seated internal disorder. They attacked the local expressions with their modern orthodox measures. So what they did, they used to mitigate or try to destroy the local expressions with their medicines, which cause suppression and worsening of the disease. Thus, Psora spread internally, making life more dangerous. So therefore, the Psora spread more internally, or the disease traveled from less important organs to the more important organs, and it used to threaten the life of the person. This is true when more than 2 miasms are involved of Psora and syphilis. So he says that this is more true, especially when 2 miasms are involved, especially Psora and syphilis. That is the tubercular miasm. The tubercular miasm is of such a union. So the tubercular miasm is a union of Psora and the syphilitic miasm. The pseudo-Psora is worse than the Psora. In a similar fashion, when Psora is combined with psychosis, it is worse than the pseudo-Psora. Thus, specific and malignant, acute febrile or inflammatory states such as pneumonia, diphtheria, erysipelas, inflammation of the brain, kidney, heart, as a rule, always have 2 miasms present. So all these diseases will be multi-miasmatic. That means more than 1 miasms which are present. In a similar manner, when we meet stubborn and determined pathological states, also we see more than 1 miasm which is present. Or disease condition of an apparently simple nature, such as pain, neuralgia, epistaxis, nausea, vomiting, rheumatism, piles, ulcers, boils, or any simple localized condition not easily amenable to treatment, we may expect 2 or more miasms present. So even a condition of a simple nature, such as pain, neuralgia, nausea, vomiting, which doesn't respond to treatment, we have to think, or we have to keep at the back of our mind that there will be more than 2 or more than 2 miasms which are present, as a result of which they are not amenable to treatment. This given example of a case of rectal trouble has been described on page 24. So, in a nutshell, the case of anal fissure was where sulfur 50 was prescribed according to symptom similarity. So there were symptoms of sulfur. So sulfur 50 was prescribed. Within 48 hours, all the distressing symptoms disappeared. In its place, there was a profuse greenish yellow acrid leucorrhea, biting and burning the pudendum. So after 48 hours, when the distressing symptom disappeared, there was a acrid leucorrhea, which was biting and burning the pudendum. Furthermore, in the history, the patient's husband was also suffering from acute rheumatism because he had got wet in the rain for several hours, and as a result of the exciting factor, the rheumatism broke forth. This strengthened diagnosis of acquired gonorrheal psychosis by a husband. So the husband already had the psychosis present within him, that is a gonorrheal psychosis, and which got activated because of an exciting cause of getting drenched in the rain for several hours. The patient had contracted the disease from a husband, which were later on suppressed, thus the rectal troubles developed. So the patient had contracted disease from a husband, which was suppressed, as a result of which the rectal troubles developed. And sulfur CM then cured the case. So this is an example he is given. You can read it on page 24. Much more detail is described out there. So that's all for this part. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.